Thanks very much. Well, with Sir Alan promising to fight to clear his name, the investigation is extremely complex, as we've said, and it raises questions about the safety of offshore banking. Matt Prodger reports.
They're the islands to which tourists escape and money goes to hide. This is the world of offshore banking, where the weather's sunny and the finances are shady. The concept of the offshore bank is gloriously simple. Here, for a small fee, you can bury your treasure, minimum questions asked. And so money, which may have started here in the City of London, effectively disappears. And with it, so does the tax that would have been paid had it remained in the UK. Instead, it ends up here and here, 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 and in dozens of other locations, mainly in the Caribbean. The list reads like an upmarket holiday brochure, from Barbados to the Bahamas, the Cook Islands to the Caymans. Now, thanks to Alan Stanford, the most famous of these black holes, or rather offshore banking centres, is Antigua and Barbuda, at the heart of a £5.5 billion fraud investigation, which analysts believe may be just the tip of the iceberg. From palm-fringed island to island, the writer Nick Cohen has tracked the flow of funds from here to there.
The whole question is, why hasn't the whole issue been tackled? The two reasons, really. First of all, we have got governments in the West, in the UK, in the US, that have basically had a very hands-off approach to the financial system. I mean, we've seen that in the recent credit crunch. You know, why hasn't all that sort of inefficiency, all that corruption, all that poor banking investment practice, why hasn't that been tackled? Well, the answer, because governments have taken a hands-off. And the same thing has applied to money laundering and financial crime. Governments, their regulators have been weak and have stood back from people they saw as making money for everybody.
If tax avoidance is increasingly a problem, so is money laundering. Criminals put their dirty treasure in offshore banks. From there, it gets turned into legitimate currency and put through several accounts until it's clean enough for legitimate use in a respectable banking centre like London. The roots of the system go back to the era of prohibition, when American gangsters laundered their money through island casinos. In the 70s and 80s, it was drug money. Today, it's estimated that dirty money is equivalent to 3% of the world's GDP. That's $3 trillion. Now, with the global credit crisis, there's talk of getting tough.
I would pay for it, very specifically, by closing tax loopholes and tax havens. You've got a building in the Cayman Islands that supposedly houses 12,000 corporations. That's either the biggest building or the biggest tax scam on record.
We must persuade the whole of the world to take action, and that will include action against regulatory and tax havens in parts of the world which have escaped the regulatory attention that they need.
And there are those who believe they can do it, if there's a will.
There are many things he could do immediately. He could also support the calls that are being pushed through from the European Parliament and the European Commission for a new international financial reporting standard requiring multinational companies to disclose their accounting information on a country-by-country basis. Now, what that would do is it would make it very much more difficult for them to shift their profits out of the countries where the profits are created.
Governments have been saying this for a very long time. There have been efforts to get tough on them. Organisations in Europe have said, you know, these are the blacklisted locations. There are 34 blacklisted tax havens. Nothing has been done about it.
Across the Americas, people have been queuing outside Alan Stanford's banks. The governments of Venezuela, Peru, Panama, Ecuador, they've all stepped in to try to save deposits. As for the man himself, latest reports say he's handed himself in to the FBI in Virginia, far from his island haven. Of course, shady island banks are one thing, but blue-chip financial institutions, they're something else altogether, aren't they? Well, the banking giant UBS has just paid the American government close to $800 million to settle allegations that it defrauded the tax authorities there on behalf of its clients. Now, UBS is a Swiss bank, proof perhaps The treasure can be buried in snow as well as sand.